Rain lashed against the cold marble walls of the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. It was late 1943, and the great German war machine still thundered across Europe, or so the propaganda claimed. Inside, however, in those smoke-filled war rooms where maps stretched across oak tables and red pins marked the world, a different truth was taking shape. Adolf Hitler stood before his generals, his pale face lit by the flicker of candles and the harsh glow of maps. His voice thundered with confidence. Victory is inevitable. The fatherland shall prevail. His words echoed like a sermon, but beneath the iron discipline of his officers' faces, fear and doubt brewed like a storm no one dared name. General Heinz Guderian, the architect of Germany's Blitzkrieg, stared silently at the map. The red arrows that once surged eastward now curved backward. Soviet forces were counterattacking with relentless fury. Entire divisions had vanished in the snows of Russia. In his heart, Guderian knew the miracle weapons and the promises of victory were lies. The winter of 1943 was merciless. Reports from the Eastern Front told of starvation, frostbite, and death. Supplies never arrived. Tanks froze. Ammunition was short. The Wehrmacht, the once unstoppable German army, was bleeding to death on Russian soil. During a late-night conference, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, calm and analytical as ever, tried to reason with the Führer. "My Führer," he began carefully, "our lines are stretched thin. The men need rest, the armor needs repair. We must withdraw and consolidate before it's too late." Hitler slammed his fist against the table. "Retreat? Never. Not one step back. The German soldier does not yield." The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, like the heartbeat of a dying empire. Outside the chamber, officers whispered in corridors. They no longer talked of victory but of survival. By 1944, the air in Berlin had changed. The grand parades were gone, replaced by air raid sirens and blackouts. Yet Hitler still spoke of destiny. His generals, once his greatest believers, now obeyed out of fear, not faith. Field Marshal Rommel, the famed Desert Fox, returned from North Africa a national hero, but behind his blue eyes was quiet despair. When he inspected the Atlantic Wall, the coastal defenses meant to stop an Allied invasion, he realized how weak they truly were. "The war cannot be won," he confided to his aide. "Not anymore." But such words were treason. Even generals could vanish overnight. When D-Day arrived on June 6, 1944, and the beaches of Normandy erupted in fire, the truth could no longer be denied. The Allies had come, and they would not be stopped. Hitler, refusing to believe it, ordered phantom divisions to attack. Divisions that no longer existed. By early 1945, the Reich was collapsing. From the east came the Red Army. From the west, the Americans and British. German cities burned. Civilians fled by the thousands, dragging their lives in wooden carts. Inside the Führer bunker, buried deep beneath Berlin, Hitler clung to illusion. Maps covered the walls, but they meant nothing now. The front no longer existed. The war was inside the city itself. General Wilhelm Keitel stood stiffly at attention as Hitler ranted about secret weapons that would turn the tide. "They'll come," Hitler shouted, his voice cracking. "Steiner's army will crush the Soviets. The traitors will be punished." But Steiner had no army left. The generals knew it. They exchanged glances. No one dared speak. The once mighty leader of Europe now seemed like a ghost trapped in his own delusion. When Hitler finally left the room, one of the officers whispered, "It's over." No one argued. Outside the bunker, Berlin was rubble. Children fought in uniform. Old men carried rifles too heavy to lift. The people still whispered Sieg, Heil, not from loyalty, but fear. In those final weeks, the generals met quietly among themselves. They no longer spoke of defending the Reich, only of ending the madness. Field Marshal Model shot himself in the forest rather than surrender. Others burned documents, destroyed maps, and waited for the end. Guderian, exhausted and broken, confided to a fellow officer, "We were soldiers once. Now we're just men waiting for judgment." The Allies were only miles away. The thunder that shook the ground was not distant anymore, it was at the city gates. On April 20th, 1945, Hitler's birthday, the bunker was filled with the smell of smoke and despair. The Soviets had surrounded Berlin. Yet, Hitler still demanded reports, still issued orders to armies that no longer existed. General Jodl entered the map room, his face pale. "My Führer," he said quietly, "Army Group Vistula has been destroyed. There's no line left to hold." Hitler didn't respond. His hands trembled. His eyes darted across the map as if searching for a miracle. "Then we fight in the streets," he murmured. "Every man, every boy, until the last bullet." That night, the generals gathered in silence. They no longer saw a leader, only a man consumed by madness. Some wept. Some simply stared at the floor. The war was already over in their hearts. On April 30th, the sound of artillery echoed above the bunker. The ground shook as Soviet shells rained down. The last defenders of the Reich fought hopelessly in the ruins of the capital. Hitler's closest staff gathered for a final farewell. The generals stood in silence as their Führer, the man who had once promised them a 1,000-year empire, retreated into his private chamber. Minutes later, a single gunshot broke the stillness. The war for Germany was finished. But for the generals, the end had come long before that moment. It had come at Stalingrad, at Normandy, in the frozen forests of the East, in every meeting where truth was swallowed by fear. When the guns finally fell silent, Germany lay in ashes. The surviving generals were captured, tried, and condemned. Some claimed they had only followed orders. Others admitted that they had known deep down, long before the end, that the war was lost. One of them, years later, would write in his memoir, "We realized too late that loyalty had become blindness. We were not soldiers anymore, we were prisoners of our own obedience." History often remembers wars by their victories, but the true story lies in the moment when hope dies. For Hitler's generals, that moment did not come with surrender. It came with the realization that they had been fighting for a lie. And as the ruins of Berlin smoked under the gray spring sky, one truth echoed through every shattered street. The war had not ended in April 1945. It had ended long before, in the hearts of those who finally saw the truth. When power blinds the mind and pride deafens the heart, defeat begins. Not on the battlefield, but in the soul.